The Alien Collaborator by Jason McClellan. I don't put a lot of stock in most stories of alien abduction or alien contact. I say most because there are those occasional stories with an exceptional combination of details, witnesses, and believable participants that have forced me, as an objective, open-minded reporter, to entertain the possibility. Still, I think the large majority of abduction stories are absolutely bogus, despite having been given the news that I'm a serial abductee. That's right. I was informed by a complete stranger a few years ago that I am an alien abductee. I guess contactee is the more appropriate term here. Then again, I never consented to being taken, so abductee fits. But according to... I guess I should just tell the story. My colleagues and I were representing Redactus at a UFO conference in Las Vegas in July of 2013. I was engaged in a polite conversation with a potential customer who was browsing the merchandise we had for sale at our vendor table when I noticed out of the corner of my eye a woman approaching our table at a hurried pace. I glanced in her direction, and I was slightly caught off guard by her intense gaze that was fixed directly on me. She had that look, like she was an old friend who was anxious to say hello to me after not seeing me for several years. I'm terrible with names, but I'm pretty good when it comes to remembering faces, and I was confident that I had never seen this woman who had me in her sights. I hadn't yet finished my conversation with the interested conference attendee when the unknown woman, who I'll refer to as Bethany, reached the table. She just stood there, staring at me while I held my conversation. It was pretty awkward. I think my customer was weirded out too, because he abruptly finished his story, thanked me for my time, and departed after casting an annoyed look at the interrupter. I turned to look at Bethany, who was still just staring directly at me, with somewhat of a mischievous smile on her face. After my acknowledgement, she erupted with, "I saw you last night." I'm in Las Vegas. Lots of people saw me last night, I thought to myself. I didn't really know how to respond, so I just said, "Oh, cool. Yeah, the casino here's not too bad." She quickly shook her head, then blurted out, "No, not here. Up there, on one of their ships." She pointed to the sky. It was now clear that she was one of those people. The ones who come up to me periodically at events like this and tell me that somehow they know that aliens have taken me aboard spaceships on multiple occasions. I don't discount the possibility that extraterrestrials could be visiting Earth, although I think that's very unlikely. But I find it incredibly hard to believe that if aliens were beaming me onto their ship, I wouldn't remember such an incredible occurrence. Still, multiple people, including this woman standing at our vendor table, are absolutely convinced that they've seen me aboard alien spacecraft. Perhaps out of boredom, I decided to play along. I asked Bethany to fill me in on my space voyage because I had no memory of any such event. I think she was mildly offended by my apparent absent-mindedness, failing to recall my very important space adventures. Because, you see, I am a commander aboard an alien vessel. That's what Bethany told me. She observed me aboard an extraterrestrial spacecraft, working with extraterrestrials in some sort of command capacity. I wanted to hear more. This was very different from the typical stories I hear from people who claim to have seen me on UFOs. These types of tales are usually void of details, consisting of no more than a claim that I was seen on a ship among a group of abductees. Maybe the commander thing stroked my ego just right, but I wanted to know more. I wasn't going to get anything more from Bethany, unfortunately. She kept looking around the room nervously before abruptly turning and walking away from the table. I put Bethany and her crazy story out of my mind and continued promoting Redactus to the few curious conference attendees who were bored enough to stop at our table. When you spend a day behind the table in a vendor room at a conference, that day moves very slowly. When the conference organizer finally made the announcement that it was time for the vendor room to close for the day, I was more than ready to pack up and head to my hotel. Redactus is a profitable company, and that's something I'm proud of, but it's not that profitable. When we attend conferences, we almost always stay at off-site hotels that have cheaper rates than the event's host hotel. And that was certainly the case at this particular event in Las Vegas. Despite being achy and tired from the long day, I spent some time sitting at the bar in the casino of my hotel to have a couple drinks and play some video poker before calling it a night. I remember thinking back on the day's events as I sat there, and I remember when I recalled the strange story Bethany told me. I laughed. I literally laughed out loud. I immediately felt like a weirdo. The stares from those next to me at the bar were my cue to cash out, pay up, and head to bed. My room was on the 6th floor in what seemed like the farthest corner of the building from the elevator. I was already mentally and physically exhausted from the long day. Had a few drinks, and that long walk down the hallway, and by the time I reached my door, I was more than ready to fall into my bed. The mechanical whirring of the disengaging lock concluded, and I opened the door. At that very moment, an intense light flashed from within the room, temporarily blinding me. I immediately flipped on the lights, and as soon as my vision returned, I scanned the room, but didn't see anything out of the ordinary. I went to the large floor-to-ceiling windows to see if maybe there was someone or something outside that might have been the source of the flash. I initially thought that maybe a helicopter or some aircraft had been turning or shining a spotlight in the direction of my room at the precise moment I entered the room. But I didn't see anything in the sky either. I convinced myself that, thanks to alcohol and exhaustion, my mind was playing tricks on me. So I shrugged my shoulders, brushed my teeth, then crawled into bed, where I drifted off to sleep unusually quickly. I was jolted awake as something that felt like a strong earthquake tossed me to the floor. I immediately grabbed for my left knee, which was stinging with a sharp pain caused by the fall. I felt blood coming from a small gash. I rubbed my eyes, trying to wake up to determine what happened. My eyes shot wide open when I realized I wasn't on the floor of my hotel room. I was on the floor of a corridor. As my mind tried to make sense of things, a feeling of shame came over me, because, naturally, I assumed I must have had more to drink than I realized, and at some point during the night, stumbled out of my room. But as the fog of sleep dissipated, it became very apparent that I wasn't in the hallway of my hotel. I saw that I wasn't on the ugly, dark patterned carpet designed to disguise vomit, spilled booze, bodily fluids, and other stains from disgusting guests. These floors were bare, cold metal. The walls weren't covered with tacky, dated wallpaper. Again, just bare, cold metal. And the doors didn't have room numbers. They didn't even have door handles. I quickly rose to my feet and looked around for any sign or any person who might help point me back to my floor. The only thing that made sense was that I must have drunkenly taken an elevator to the basement of my hotel or some other employees-only utility floor. I saw a woman emerge from a hallway about 50 feet from where I was standing. I smiled and started toward her to see if she could point me to the nearest elevator, but I stopped in my tracks when I saw something emerge from that same hallway behind the woman. For lack of a better description, what appeared to be an alien was apparently guiding this woman, against her will, to an unknown location. They walked right past me. The woman didn't even acknowledge my presence. The alien simply nodded, but continued on his way. Before I could react, I saw a bright flash, and the next thing I remember, I was in my bed in my hotel room. A dream. It was all a dream. It must have been. I jumped in the shower to clear my head and to get ready for another day of sitting at a vendor table at a UFO conference. I was caught off guard when I saw a fresh gash on my left knee. It looked exactly like it did in my dream. That freaked me out a little, but I chalked it up to coincidence, something I must have done in my sleep and incorporated it into my dream. Back at the UFO conference, sitting at my vendor table, I sat quietly, running my alien dream back and forth in my mind. I could remember it vividly, every last detail. I never remember my dreams. So the fact that I could remember this one really stood out to me. I was just about to stand up from my seat to go find a cup of coffee when I noticed a woman slowly making her way through the vendor room. Seeing her completely paralyzed me. I couldn't move. It was the woman I had seen in my dream being escorted by the alien. Now, it's possible that I had seen her the previous day and somehow unknowingly incorporated her into my dream, but I had no memory of ever seeing her before. I thought about going to talk to her, but as I started to step out from behind the Redactus table, Bethany passed by, stared directly at me, nodded, and mouthed, "I told you so," and proceeded on her way. Thank you for listening to Redactus. Redactus is a Rogue Planet production. For more content, visit rogueplanet.tv.